This is a corset. Let me show you how to make it. Let's start.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm starting with the front bodice block. This is my base, the foundation of everything. Now the first thing I did was to reduce the waist measurement because the waist is where we want the most shaping, okay? So make sure you're labeling everything down from the bust point, the underbust, the waistline, and also the hemline. So now for this corset, I subtracted 3 inches from my waist measurement. I'm not subtracting from the bust, hip, or hemline. Those stay as they are because I want a structure at the top and comfort at the bottom. Next, I marked my corset length. So from the waistline, I'm going down by 4 inches. You can make yours longer or shorter depending on your torso or the look you're looking for. So from the shoulder line, I measured down 20.5 inches. Now let's shape the waist. I wanted a clean and sculpted waistline, so I measured 2 inches from the center front inward and then drew a slanted line at the waist. This gives me more shape without making the corset uncomfortable. I also extended the dart lines slightly so they flow seamlessly into the corset length. This is very important if you're planning to add boning or structure later. It keeps the lines clean. And also remember to add your dart allowance at the waistline. Dart allowance of 1.5 inches plus your waist measurement. That is the snatched waist measurements together. So make sure you're not making any mistakes here. The best way to derive your underbust measurement is to actually take the measurement of it. So once you know your measurements, you can actually mark it at that point, and whatever you have, you can add it to the underbust point to give it a good structure. But in this case, it doesn't really matter because we're creating a corset. So I'm going to be using 0.5 inches on both sides, okay? And don't worry, it is fine. Once that is done, you go ahead to use the curve rule to connect that point to give it a good curve. And you go ahead to connect that point to the waistline, and voila! You can see how this looks, okay? We good. Now I moved to the top and I divided the shoulder seam in two and marked that center. I connected to the bust span with a soft slanted line, slashed it open and closed the bust dart. So we're going to be taking the measurement in between the shoulder opening, and whatever you derive is what you're going to be placing on the shoulder slope. Now let's go ahead and do that. Mine is 2.8 inches, so you need to measure that accurately and divide it into 2. Now whatever you get, you're going to be placing it on the shoulder slope and draw a slanted line there. Now before that, from this shoulder point, I'm going to go down by 1.5 inches, and that is because we're adding a yoke to this. You have to return the dart back. From the bust, I measured 3.5 inches upward. That is my over bust guide. You can go higher if you want a more dramatic neckline, but 3.5 inches gives me just the right coverage. Now, whatever you derive on this side, you should also take that measurement to the other side. So this is how I derived both sides, okay? After that, I slashed the bust dart. Once that is done, I close up the neckline to prepare for the yoke. So make sure you're connecting all the dots like so. So this is how you're going to connect it to get your yoke. So whatever I got at that middle part, I'm going to add it back to the armholes there and connect that point like so. So this is how it looks. The next step is to close this dart point and create your style line, okay? So this is how we'll be closing this. So make sure you're closing it up properly, and I'm just going to be placing it on each other like so and creating the style line with the armhole curve. So now this is where you want your creativity to come in. You can decide to choose whatever style line you want for this pattern, okay? So now I'm going to be using the tracing wheel to, mark it so that I would know how it looks like by the time I open it up. So now that I've opened it up, this is how I'm going to be drawing this, because I'm going to be using this same pattern for the yoke. Hope you get what I mean. Now I'm going to permanently close this bust dart because we're done with taking the measurements. At the bottom, I'll be going up by 0.5 inch just to create a style line at that hem point, and voila, here we have it. Can you see? Now go ahead to cut this out and make sure you're labeling it. So this is the center front and the side front, and this is the yoke point. So at this point, make sure you're adding a little sheet there to create a good curve before you go ahead to cut out the yoke smoothly. Okay, now let's move to the back. The idea is to match the snatched waist of the front. I also subtracted 3 inches from the waist here and added 1.5 inches for that allowance. I went down by 1 inch at the center back and up 0.5 inches at the side seam to create a gentle slope in the waist. Create that eyelet opening. I went in by 1.5 inches, and at the bottom I went in by 0.5 inches. So I'm just going to create the slanted line like so, and this is where you can place your eyelet here. I'm not sure if I want to put eyelet or probably just create a loophole, so that would be fine. So yeah, I'm not sure yet, so let's continue. Now this is where you can get creative. You can choose whatever neckline you want to use, but for this tutorial I'll be using probably a curved neckline at this point. So yeah, this is how it should look like at the back. I'm not certain about what I want yet, but yeah, this is basically how I want it to be. But by the time I'm done, probably I change the style, so that's left for you to decide. So I'm just going to be following this step, and then we can go ahead to cut this through. Alright, now that we're done drafting the pattern, the next step is transferring each piece onto the fabric. We have all our pattern pieces ready: the center front, center back, side back, the yoke for both the front and the back. Be sure you're keeping everything organized exactly like this before cutting. For this project, I'm using crepe fabric, a fancy net fabric, suit lining, push-up cups, 0.5 inches Regeline boning, and airstay. Now here is how I've laid out my pattern on the fabric. Once you've done the same, we're ready to start sewing. We'll begin by joining the center front to the side front using 0.75 inch seam allowance. After that, join the side front to the side back, and finally connect the side back to the center back. Here is how everything looks after pressing clean, flat, and opened up nicely. Next, we're working with Regeline boning. I've already stitched some of the boning in place. Take notes, this is on the lining, not the main fabric. This is important so you don't get confused. Now I will show you how I insert the boning. First, I cover the edges of the boning with masking tape to prevent any poking. Then I measure 0.75 inches from the top edge and 0.75 inches from the bottom edge before placing the boning. I'm stitching the boning only onto the seam allowance, not the main fabric, so everything stays flexible and neat. This technique helps the boning hold structure while keeping the outer side looking smooth. Once the boning is in place, the next step is adding the push up cups. First, measure your underbust and bust point. This helps you position the cups correctly and ensure the seats are the perfect spot. Mark the center of the cup and align it with the bust point. Pin the cups carefully right along the boning channels and make sure you're pinning only the lining side. Once they are secure, gently push the lining into shape with your hand and double check the placement before sewing. Now, we stitch the cups in place. Start by tacking the center to prevent movement, then secure the sides, making sure everything sits nice and flat. Find the midpoint of the bust cup and mark your bust point. Then go ahead to tack it down. Here's what it looks like now: smooth, lifted, and perfectly centered. Moving on, the back loops for the corset lacing. I decided not to use eyelets for this one. Instead, I made tiny loop straps. Each one is about 2.5 inches long and 1/4 inch wide. I ended up making about 22 loops in total on each side. To place the loops, go down 0.5 inches from the top and up 0.5 inches from the bottom. Then divide the space in between equally to place your straps. Once they are evenly spaced, pin them in securely. And this is how it should look. Now, on the assembling of the shell, that is the fabric, as you go, begin stitching from the center back through the neckline and around to the other side. Also, remember the loops go on the main fabric so that once we attach the lining, it encloses everything neatly. Mark your waistline to ensure everything aligns and your fit is snatched. Now take note, if you want to add your yoke to this, make sure you're doing that right away. But because I am not using that method, let's move along. Look how smooth and clean this looks. Exactly what we want. If you're following along, I would love to see your results. So feel free to tag me on Instagram, Facebook, or even here on YouTube as Glory Winery. Now that the upper part is stitched, for the side seams, I stitched only one side closed and left the other open. This gives me access to the inside for clean finishing. That's why we left that 0.75 inch gap earlier, so that you can turn and close the bottom edge cleanly without bias tape. Trim any excess bulk from the seam so everything lays flat. It's time to press the waistline for that perfect cinch. For the finishing, I attached the lacing bar, and this is how the corset should look like by the time you're done. Look at how lovely it looks. Make sure you're pressing this to the back. Can you see how the back looks like there's no burning inside? That is how this should look like. It's like invincible boning, okay? And the structure looks really good. By the time you place your straps on the loop area and snatch your waist, I'm sure it will cinch in properly. Some of your comments on how to fix the net on the corset, I tried doing it this way. In case you want to put on this corset, now this part is for you. But if you're not going to be putting net, I'm sure this part is actually okay. So you can actually stop right here. I draped it directly on the body of the corset for a custom effect. If you want a full tutorial on how I draped the net, just comment drape. And for my lovely subscribers that requested for this here, this is how you can do this. You have a corset, so in case you want to cover up the top part of your corset, you can actually drape. That's the beauty of designing. Feel free to adapt as you go. Now, if you would rather stitch your yoke in traditionally, no problem. Just insert it between the main fabric and lining before sewing the neckline. But for this look, the draping method gives a really elegant custom finish. Don't you think so? Ooh, I love it. I did a bit of extra tucking and pinning to perfect the neckline and silhouette. Sometimes you might need an extra hand, so don't hesitate to get help from another designer or friend. Take your time to arrange and stitch everything securely. The final result should feel structured but also soft against the skin. The push-up effect is amazing. The back looks clean, and the overall it's giving high fashion, made to fit perfectly. So now I want to hear from you. Which methods do you prefer? Sewing your yoke into the corset or draping it on top? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your responses, and I'm always happy to chat and answer your questions. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you recreate this, tag me. I would love to repost and celebrate your amazing work. Okay, I hope this helps. This is the fitting on my body, and it's super important that you do your own fitting too, so you know exactly where to adjust and where to leave things as they are. That needle and thread you see, I placed them there on purpose while I was still tacking and making sure everything was perfectly aligned. Be sure to take your time and do the same. Here is the final look. I hope you love it, cause I love it. Drop a comment below and let me know which tutorial you would like me to do next. See you in the next video. Toodles!